Now, for more on the latest development, the ongoing story around that Estina dairy project, let's get more reaction to the Gauteng High Court ruling that it was unconstitutional and invalid of the Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane's report on the Vrede dairy project. With me in the studio is Lawson Naidoo from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Lawson, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you together, or your organization, together with the Democratic Alliance, brought this case to court. Your reaction to today's finding?
Well, we're certainly very pleased with the outcome of this case and the judgment that was handed down by Judge Tolmay this morning. We've been anticipating this judgment for some time now, and we're very pleased that the judgment has come out and has spoken as strongly as it has about the manner in which the Public Protector conducted the investigation, the manner in which he narrowed down the scope of the investigation, apparently in a predetermined attempt to try and protect influential politicians from the scope of her investigation.
Now, those who support Busisiwe Mkhwebane would say that a case brought by an organization such as yours, and indeed along with an organization like the Democratic Alliance, in itself is a political ploy to take action or against the Public Protector's office. What is your reply to those kinds of statements? Because you're trying to say that the Public Protector's work has been tainted politically as well.
Well, her work is clearly tainted. Whether it's political or not is not for us to say. And we brought an application to the court to review and set aside the report because we felt that the report was substandard. It did not deal with the issues that the Public Protector ought to have looked at. There was an abundant amount of evidence and information in the public domain, which she simply ignored, and gave the excuse initially that her office did not have the resources and capacity to investigate. And yet she produced a report that whitewashed the responsibility of politicians. It was only when Parliament called her in last year after we launched the case that she ultimately agreed to go back and broaden the investigation and to interview those politicians, which she's now only doing a year later. So even then she's dragging her feet on this matter.
Now, the Public Protector's Reserve Bank as well as Vrede Dairy Project reports have been found wanting by the High Court. Do you believe she's fit to hold office?
No, and I've felt for a long time that she wasn't fit to hold office. And this judgment today is just further evidence of her incapacity. The judgment speaks about her conduct in this matter, that she ignored the evidence that was freely available. She deliberately narrowed down the scope of the investigation. She deliberately changed the findings and the remedial action that was contained in a provisional report that was done by her predecessor, Advocate Madonsela, without providing the court with any justification of why that was done. So it's quite clear that she had deliberately set out to craft the report in such a way that those that were really implicated were exonerated.
What do you think should happen next, specifically with an eye on this Vrede Dairy Project report?
Well, I think the matter needs to be investigated by the law enforcement agencies, by the Hawks. We know that the Asset Forfeiture Unit have already been looking at this matter and brought an application unsuccessfully last year. But that criminal investigations and further civil investigations should continue to ensure that those that were responsible are held liable, whether that be criminally or civilly, and that, as many of the beneficiaries would like, is that the project is actually put in place so that those who are the actual intended beneficiaries do get something out of this.
We're seeing a move towards shoring up or strengthening organizations that may have been weakened over the last few years, specifically over during the previous dispensation, if I could call it that. Do you think a step should be taken to ready the ship of the Public Protector?
Well, look, what this case shows is that this was one of the classic cases of state capture, of diversion of vast sums of public money to benefit a few politicians and then members of the Gupta family and their associates. So this is clearly an example of state capture, and we've seen efforts being made to clean up the NPA, removal of Shauna Abrams and others, the appointment of Advocate Batoya as the head, and the President's constant commitment to restoring institutions of governance. And I think he now needs to cast his eyes very firmly in the direction of the Public Protector and ensure that Parliament does its job in terms of instituting an inquiry as to whether she is fit and proper to be our Public Protector.
Do you think it's the end of the road for Busisiwe Mkhwebane, or do you think she'll appeal this judgment?
Well, look, there's a second part of this judgment that is still outstanding, and that relates to the personal costs order that we sought in this matter. Judge Tolmay has withheld her judgment on that regard until after the Constitutional hands down its judgment in the ABSA matter, or Reserve Bank matter. And I think should that part of the judgment go against Advocate Mkhwebane, I think the writing will certainly be on the wall for her.
Just one final question before I let you go. Obviously, Busisiwe Mkhwebane's name is front and center in the story, but another high-profile name in the middle of it is Ace Magashule, who was then the Free State Premier when this was unfolding. What do you make of the Public Protector advising Ace Magashule to investigate the Vrede matter? And do you think that he has further questions that need to be answered?
Well, I think there are lots of questions that Mr. Magashule has to answer, and I think it was disingenuous of the Public Protector to ask someone who was so heavily implicated in the scandal in the first place to actually conduct the investigation. And I think that really exposes the manner in which Busisiwe Mkhwebane went about conducting this investigation and producing her report by getting those who were implicated to actually take charge of the process.
We're going to leave it there for now. Lawson Naidoo, as always, thank you for your time. He's the Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Thanks for coming in.